Welcome to the Life Engineering Podcast. My name is Gabriela, former chemical engineer, relationship coach, and author. In each episode, we'll uncover the wisdom, strategies, and tools to help you build thriving relationships and purpose-driven careers. My wish is that something shared in this space touches your heart, brings clarity, or gently guides you toward what you need most in your life right now. Thank you for being here. Let's begin now. Welcome back to another episode of the Life Engineering Podcast, where we explore what it truly means to create a life with no regrets in our work, in our relationships, and our alignment with purpose. Every 2 weeks, I get to sit with the most inspiring leaders who are not only successful in what they do, but really intentional about who they are becoming. I'm your host, Gabriela, relationship and career coach and author of Becoming a Power Couple. And today I'm extremely excited because my guest, Jon Rennie, spent years serving as a U.S. Navy nuclear submarine officer during some of the most intense moments of the Cold War. He lived and led in an environment where there was no escape, no room for ego, and not such thing as good enough. After the Navy, he brought those hard-earned lessons into the business world, leading 8 manufacturing companies, becoming the CEO of Peak Demand Inc., writing best-selling leadership books, and hosting the widely loved Deep Leadership podcast. What I love about Jon is that nothing he teaches is actually theoretical, although he is doing a PhD on leadership, as far as I remember from our conversation on his podcast. It's actually lived. His leadership is lived, it's felt. It's leadership that's been pressure tested in the dark, quiet hours of underwater. And today, we're going to talk about what those experiences taught him, not just about leading teams, but about being human, being accountable, and being someone others trust with their lives and their livelihoods. Jon, I'm so grateful to have you with us today. Welcome.
Thank you, Gabriela. It's great to be on your show.
I would like to start with this question. I'm sure this is what everybody who's listening is asking themselves. What was it like? Really, what was it like to lead on a submarine? And how did it translate into business leadership? Take us back, please.
Yeah, sure. I think when you first get on a submarine, you do a lot of training before you get there. So even after college, I spent 1.5 years training to become a submarine officer. But when you get there, the size and complexity of this amazing warship it's intimidating, right? So you really do rely on your people as much as you can, especially as a young junior officer first showing up to the boat, that you really depend on, others to help you get up to speed and to become what we call qualified. So being qualified meant that you had the ability to stay and watch, right? And there was a high level of positive peer pressure to be able to get qualified and be responsible for standing watches on the ship. So I think, what I experienced was being around very competent sailors, senior enlisted, and other officers who mentored me, helped me, showed me the ropes in a very difficult and complex environment. And I think I learned a lot about leadership because, leading on a submarine is very unique. You can't go home after you've had a hard week, right? You can't have a beer at the end of a day, right? It was a 24/7 business, and we typically deployed for over 100 days every time. So, and you were also, if you will, stuck with the people that you deployed with. So if you had a bad sailor, for example, or a problem person in your department, you had to figure out how to work with that person to make them effective. You couldn't fire somebody and get a replacement. So you had to work with the people that you were deployed with. So I think all those things, all those experiences really helped me in the business world sort of, find ways to be able to get the most out of the people that I had working for me. And the other thing too is kind of that stands out is that on a submarine, every sailor is vital to our mission, even the most junior sailor. And so I think that that always stuck with me when I went in the business world, which is that every person is important to accomplishing our mission, no matter what their jobs are. So I think it's sort of treating everybody with respect, and everybody is critical to the mission. I think that's something that always stood with me when I was in the business world.
But I'm sure when you transition, thank you for sharing all of this. First of all, I could, obviously, I never been in a submarine, but I could see what you were sharing. I could have images like you were telling the story. So you transition from this leadership pressure cooker. You had to learn, you had no choice into the business world. And I'm sure you saw things that were less than ideals and leaders that call themselves leaders, but they did not know how to lead. How do you make that shift mentally and avoid becoming intolerant or frustrated with how things are done outside the submarine?
Yeah, I think that that's probably a little bit of a, I think many veterans have that problem when, so you first rotate out of the military, when you're around like highly competent people that are very mission focused, right? And so when I came, my first job was in a large global organization, and I started out as a design engineer, and I recognized right away that my peers weren't all committed to the cause, our corporate cause. It wasn't like the military where everybody was like sort of committed to the mission, committed to the cause. People went home without work being done. Bosses didn't really have a lot of experience and didn't really lead very well. So I found myself in a place that was sort of imperfect compared to the environment in the military. But I think that's probably why I rose into leadership positions, is because I felt like I needed to step up and make a difference for the people around me. So they needed good leadership. And so, as my wife always said, somehow I was dragged kicking and screaming up the corporate ladder. So I just kept getting more and more responsibility because I felt like someone needed to step up and lead. So I always kept volunteering myself to take on more and more assignments, projects, departments, eventually leading my first manufacturing plant at 32 years old. And pretty much I've been doing that, and I'm now 58. I've been doing that for all that time, leading manufacturing businesses. So, sort of just, I felt responsibility. I felt that someone needed to lead, and so I sort of stepped up into those roles and filled in where we needed leadership, and that's something I just always have done.
It's so beautiful. Turn the gap in, rather than being frustrated, turn it into purpose and service.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think that also probably that help you step away from the judgment, because it's very difficult for us to serve when we become judgmental of the situation.
Yeah, it is. And I think sometimes too, one of the things I look at is that every time I'm in a room with a group of people is that everybody has different backgrounds, everybody has different experiences. We're through the way we were raised, it affects who we are. So I think, one of the things that we can do best as leaders is try to get the best out of everyone that's around us, regardless of their background, their feelings. So I think I guess I'm probably pretty tolerant towards people with different backgrounds and different, whether you're ex-military or not, or what sort of experiences you had. Because I've always feel like, everyone can add value to the team. We just got to find, it's like I always think of people like a puzzle pieces. Like how does this person fit into the puzzle that I'm trying to build, right, as an organization? So I think for me, it's always been about, like, I love people and I love the messiness of people, because I also find that people will also surprise you, and they bring their creativity, their uniqueness, and so it doesn't have to be done my way. It just has to be done, and I like employees to bring their whole selves to work and bring their creativity to work, and so I try not to dictate how things get done. But it's sort of, this has to get done. How do we do it? And I love to take a group approach to how we get things done.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I can see how all of that was nurtured when you were um, an officer in the submarine. So you use the phrase "earn your oxygen," which,
Mm.
of course, is such a powerful image. Can you share what that means to you?
Yeah, it's something that is sort of spoken on a submarine. It really came about when I first got on board. I heard this expression I've never heard before, and that is, when you're unqualified, when you're a new officer or new enlisted, they will call you a nub. And I didn't know what that meant. And so a nub was a non useful body. So they would say, until you're qualified, you are stealing the food and the air from everyone else on the submarine. So it created a very high level, like I said, of positive peer pressure to get qualified, to learn your systems, learn the procedures, make sure you are highly competent, because the other submariners, the other members of the crew they were going to put their lives in your hands. And so they wanted to make sure that you were qualified to be responsible when you stood that watch. You had the lives of all your crewmates in your hands. See, a submarine is a very unique military vessel because if something goes wrong, you all die. So there's a shared level of responsibility, but also a shared level of vulnerability. So we were very vulnerable to when our peers were standing watch, right? Our lives were in their hands. And so there was this high level of, like I said, peer pressure to get qualified, to be responsible, to be competent. And so we had to earn our oxygen. We had to earn the ability to basically be there for our peers, be there for our crewmates. And so, yeah, when you get fully qualified as a submarine officer, you're given these gold. They're called dolphins. It's an emblem that you wear on your uniform, like an aviator wears a wings, right? So we wear dolphins, and that is a symbol to the world that you are a qualified submariner. And that is one of the most coveted things that a submariner will accomplish. And I know the exact day I got my dolphins because it was such an important part of my becoming a submariner was getting qualified.
Well, I love the mindset behind earn your oxygen and what it means. Actually, obviously, naturally, I tend to project all these concepts into the four pillars of building a power couple, engineering a power couple synergy. And the first pillar is the me. So basically, self mastery. Make sure you show up at your best and you do your work to be the best partner that you can be. And I find there's such a similarity here, right?
Yeah, I think it's this idea of self leadership and making sure that I think when I talk to young leaders, I say, what do you do if you show up to a department and you're now the leader, and you may not be the most experienced or the oldest person in the room, which for most of my career that was the case, right? So how do you lead when you're young and inexperienced? And I always say, there's a few things you need to do. One is you have to listen. The second thing, you have to learn very quickly, and the third thing is to lead, which means that there are certain things that only the leader can do, even though you're young or inexperienced. Do those things, right? Take responsibility for your team. Make sure they have what they need to be successful, right? There's certain things you could still do even when you're young and experienced, but that second piece, learn, is very important because oftentimes we don't talk about enough about it in leadership. Is that you have to be competent. And that's something that we don't talk about enough in leadership. So it's one thing you can be authentic and you can be a servant leader, you can be a transformational leader, you can be all these things. But people look to their leaders to be competent, right? So when the storms hit, right, and the ship is bouncing around and it's dangerous, every eyeball is looking at the captain. Does the captain know what they're doing, right? And so you have to be competent. That learn piece, that second piece, is such a critical part of it. And it's about, as you mentioned, it's about leading yourself. You have to learn and you have to be skilled and you have to be competent if you want to be a leader. So it's not just, I have the title, I have the job. You need to be competent. People look to you to be competent.
So, in that case, how leaders truly learn? How do they truly grow? What's the real way of someone to learn how to lead? I'm not talking about the books, I'm talking about the
Yeah,
real.
yeah. So leadership is one of those things, and I tell people it's a little bit like chess. Like you can figure it out in a week, right? Or maybe a day, you can figure out the rules, right? But it's a lifetime, it takes a lifetime to master, right? And so the best way to learn how to lead is to lead, right? So it sounds funny, but it's like the best way to play guitar. To learn how to play guitar is to play guitar, right? You have to get the reps in, you have to do it, and you have to do it hopefully under the guidance of a more experienced leader or a mentor or a coach, someone that can help you answer the questions you might have or the struggles you might have, or what do I do when this happens, or I've got a new hire and it's not working out, how do I deal with it? So you have to get the reps in, and I think the best thing to do with young leaders is to have a coach, a mentor, or someone that can help guide you, guide you through that learning process. But the best way to do it is to do it. And I think, you can read books, and you can, and I believe in that truly, is to read stories from experienced leaders, read biographies of great leaders, and learn what you can learn, because these are going to help you develop techniques, or uh, kind of wire your mind in the right way of approaching different issues. But I think the only way to do it is to do it. And the only way to do it quickly is to do it under the guidance of someone that's been there before.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about another critical component in leadership is about letting people fail. And I'll tell you, recently, about a week ago or so, I watched the TED Talk from General Stan McChrystal.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a phrase he says that stay with me. He let his people fail without making them failures.
Mm.
I found that to be very profound. So why is that so important to let your people fail without making them failures?
Yeah. So, failure is very emotional, right? It's a bad feeling when we fail. When you have that feeling, you don't want that to happen again, right? So it's the best way to learn is when you have those emotional moments when you fail, it's the best time to be able to get a chance to, you're very willing to do whatever it takes to make sure you don't have that feeling again. So the Navy did a really good job at it. They would make us stand what's called a junior officer of the watch. So, for example, we would have an officer of the deck who was in charge of the entire ship, and they would have a junior officer of the deck who would stand under instruction and watch. And so you would stand that watch under the guidance of a more senior watchstander. And they would throw everything at you. So they would throw every potential casualty, fire, flooding, loss of hydraulics. They would throw all the stuff at you to see how you would react and respond and act. And they purposely made it so difficult that you couldn't win. There was no way to win. And so they would watch you through the whole through this whole exercise, and then they would stop, and then they would get the ship back in a normal, safe condition, and then we'd have a debrief, like, what did you learn? What did you do right? What did you do wrong? And I found those sessions were great because we always failed. Like, we could never get it right because it wasn't meant for you to get it right. It was meant for you to see and feel what it felt like to lose control or to say the wrong command. And so I think it was very quick for us to learn those lessons because of that. And so when I take it to business, right, one of the things that we can do is, especially as you're more experienced as a leader, you can tend to do things for your people, right? It's like, for example, I've had more than 30 years of manufacturing experience. I've seen a lot of things in manufacturing. So I could easily just take things and do things because I know what works and what doesn't work. But my people don't learn when I do that, right? So I purposely, even if I know the answer, I will not answer the question. I will allow my people to try to find the answers and try to experience it because I want them to learn along the way. I want them to fail, make mistakes. But again, I'm there as their backup, right? So I'm there to back them up. I'm like the senior officer, the experienced watchstander, watching over them, making sure that they don't fail. They're going to fail. They're going to learn, but they're not going to be a failure, right? So they're doing it under a controlled circumstance. So I always say that we need to let people fail in a controlled way so they get a chance to reflect on what did you learn through that process. And so I think as a senior, more experienced leaders, we need to do that. We need to force ourselves not to answer the question, but to say, well, what do you think? Or how should we approach this? Even if you have the answer, because I think it gives your people a chance to grow and to learn and to have ownership in the idea. Yeah.
And I think we can bring that also to our families with our children.
It's exactly like that. I mean, I raised two boys, and so yeah, you had to let them sort of make mistakes, make failures. We always told our boys, like, there was some certain rules. We would say, "Don't do stupid stuff." That was our expression in our family. And stupid stuff was the things that were permanent, right? That
Mm,
you end up on your you get a girl pregnant, or you end up in jail, or you have, something where it was permanent. So we said, don't do stupid stuff, but the rest, do it and learn, because you're going to learn through it. And I think that, I think with children, well, at least I found, is when they're younger, they need a lot of rules and a lot of, structure, because I think that helps them feel loved. But as our boys grew older, the structure came off and we gave them a lot more freedom to try to explore and to find out who they are as a person.
Yeah. And I think that giving them permission to do so, knowing that you won't see them as failures, that's what builds a bond of trust, right?
Right,
Because
exactly.
it's
Yeah.
failing safely in a way.
It is. It's a controlled environment where they can fail, and you know that at least in terms of parenting, it's an unconditional love, right? So no matter what you do, I'm still going to be your dad. I'm still going to love you, right? And I think that's a it's not as an employee, leader, and employee, it's not quite an unconditional love, but for a parent and a child, it certainly is. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I love seeing the parallel in how all the lessons you learn in the submarine, you bring them to the business world. So I want to ask you one more on this duality in a way. On a submarine, there's literally no escape. What does no escape mindset look like emotionally for you as a leader? And again, how do you bring this when you're facing challenges in business?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times that we like to run away from our problems. I saw that a lot in the corporate world, where nobody wanted to be a failure. Everybody wanted to sort of point fingers and sort of run away from their problems. I think the submarine analogy is that if there was no escape from a problem that you create, right? So, for example, if you had it out with one of your colleagues on a submarine, well, guess what? There's only 560 feet between the front and the back of the submarine, and you're there for 3 months. So you're going to run into that person. So you might as well work out the issues with that other person. You're not going to be able to hide from them, right? So a lot of times we in business, if we don't get along with somebody, or we're having an issue with someone, we'll sort of hide from them, or avoid them, right? And I think, at least on a submarine, is that you had to work stuff out, right? You couldn't just let things linger. You couldn't just escape from your problems. You had to address them head on. And I think that's a great analogy for life, is that we shouldn't run from our problems, right? A lot of people, for example, will, whether it's with alcohol, drugs, or whatever, people get into habits as a way to escape their problems, right? They're, in most cases, addictions are because of escape, right? And so I think it's because we don't face our problems head on. When we do face our problems head on and we work through them, we don't need to have those crutches. We don't need to have those things in our lives.
Yeah, you can't default to your coping mechanisms. You have to face the situation. I
Yeah.
love that. I think if everybody went through that type of training before they got into a relationship, we have, a lower rate of divorce. I'm like, you committed to this, you make it work.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I think, my wife and I, we've been married 34 years, and I think that, like somewhere along early in our marriage, we came to the idea, we had this discussion, and we said, you know what, let's not fight, because you and I are on the same team, right? It's you and I against the world. And I think that conversation way back when, I think really helped us through all, raising two boys and all the different moves that we've made and all the different jobs both of us have had, is that knowing that we're on the same team, we had each other's back. I think that is probably the number one thing that's been successful in our marriage, that we're not going to fight internally, because there's only one other person on earth that cares that much about me, and that's her. And for me, it's, and for me, her. So, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? It's the two of us. And
Absolutely.
yeah. And so I think the idea is that we're on the same team. And so it doesn't make sense, for example, a sports team, if you're fighting amongst yourself, you're not going to be able to win the game. And so I think that mindset has always been in part of our marriage, and it's allowed our marriage to be very strong.
Well, that's beautiful. That's the power couple synergy. Being on the same team is a powerful concept, and I find that sometimes it's teenagers and don't always understand it. And recently, I had the opportunity to reinforce that concept, if you might look at it this way. So I am a mentor in a leadership program for teenagers, 16, 17 years old. And I have three mentees, and there are 10 mentors. Every mentor has three mentees. And after we finish the curriculum and the activity that each mentor does with their mentees, they have to, and each mentor has their own table with their mentees sitting around. They have to get up, go to stage, and say in one sentence what they learned in the pillar of leadership we were discussing. So they have to say, today I learned this and this and this. Well, what I started seeing is that including my own mentees, the first meetings, they will get up one by one, go speak, and come back. And when I said, wait a second, you're a group.
Mm.
I said, here's what I'm going to ask you. You stand up together, you walk towards the front together. Yes, one by one, you are going to go and speak. But while the other one is speaking, you're standing on the side, you wait for them, and you come back together. So you go as a team and you come back as a team. And it might sound like it's a small thing, but for me, that was very meaningful because that translates into how we lead at work and how we lead in relationships. And I find that it needs to be taught early in life.
Mm.
You don't leave
Yes.
anybody behind concept. You go as a team, you come back as a team. You don't leave anybody behind, even
Right.
though it's a safe environment, right? So absolutely, I seeing we are in the same team. It's us against the world. I love that.
Yeah, and I think that that even ties into my business. I wrote a book called All in the Same Boat with the same kind of concepts. Is one of the things that we can do to be successful as a leader is to build unity with our team. So it's the mindset that I brought to the different businesses I've run is that the enemy is outside the four walls, right? Inside here, we're a team. The enemy. So it's not the problem is not marketing, it's not engineering, it's not sales. No, the problem is competition, right? And the problem are the external environmental effects that are affecting our business. It's not internal. Our internal, we are a team. External is are the people that we're trying to, the customers we're trying to win, the competitors we're trying to beat. So I think bringing that side, bringing unity into organization is powerful because then when you're all working towards a common goal, and you recognize that you need so you need marketing, you need engineering, you need all these different resources to be able to win as a business. Then you start thinking like a sports team. So you need, a good defense, you need a good offense, right? All these things that play into being successful as a team. In team sports, it's the same thing in a business. You need that diversity of skill sets to be able to win in the market. And the enemy is always outside the four walls, not inside the four walls. And when I, as a leader, sense that people are fighting, I like good, healthy debate, right? But fighting and sniping inside the four walls is just, I'm not intolerant towards that.
Yeah, because that's not coming from a desire to understand. That's coming from a desire to win or blame or
Yes,
default
exactly.
responsibility. Exactly. So here's you get. Thank you for this wisdom nugget. A good leader aims to create unity. So I want to ask you more about that. If someone is listening wants to lead more like a submarine captain, right? Be steady, be clear, be deeply trusted. What are the first shifts they should make in how they lead their teams? And you just mentioned one. Do you have more of these wisdom nuggets to share with us?
Yeah, I think I think the other one of the things that I try to do is make sure that that we know that we're all on the same team, so that mindset that I talked about earlier. But I also think that it comes from respect. And one of the ways that, so for example, whenever I take over a new business, the first thing I do is I do something that's going to get the attention of everybody and be able to explain very in a viral way what my values and beliefs are. So, for example, a lot of times I'll go into business and I'll see assigned parking spots for all the managers, right? And the first thing I'll do, even before I even walk in the building, is I'll find out who the maintenance manager is, and I'll say, paint over all those, parking spots, for all the managers. And the signal that I'm sending through that is that we're all on the same team, and no one's more important than the other person. If you want a good parking spot, come here early. No perks for the managers. We're all part of that same team. And every time I've done it, and I've led 9 manufacturing businesses, so I've done this a lot. Every time I do it, the word gets out very quickly. Like the new boss, he's already painted over the manager's parking spots. And because I'm sending the signal that we are all together in this together and no one's special, no one's important. As the vice president, general manager, I just have a different job to do. I, as the CEO, I just have a different job to do. I serve you, right? In fact, I often say that the people, I've run manufacturing businesses, the people that are on the shop floor making the parts, putting them in a box, they're so much more important than I am because they're the ones that are ensuring the quality that gets to my customers. They're more important. So my job is to make sure they have everything they need to be successful. That's my job, is to simply remove barriers and to make sure they have everything they need to win.
Thank you. Well, There's so much more that I want to ask you, and I know that probably listeners are going, I want more of Jon. So can you tell us, please, tell us more about your books and where people can find you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I
I've
know you have
written.
three books, so what are they?
Yeah, so I wrote my first book is I Have the Watch, and it's just stories to reflect on what it means to take ownership as a leader. And so when we stood watch as a submarine officer, we had full responsibility of everything and everybody on that ship. So the mission and the people. And so that book sort of teaches those lessons in a very clear way. So I have the watch. And then I wrote All in the Same Boat, which is the idea of bringing unity to an organization. So we're all in it together. And then I have a workbook that goes with I Have the Watch. It's called You Have the Watch. And so it's a workbook. It's a guided journal that will be with you for a year. So there's basically 52 weeks of exercises to become a leader worth following. So it kind of goes along with I Have the Watch, but it's called You Have the Watch, and it's a workbook. So what I like about it, a lot of times you read a book and then you forget the ideas. So this is meant to be on your desk for a year. So it reinforces the principles of I Have the Watch. And so all that's available on my website. It's jonsrennie.com.
Thank you, Jon. And this is also how people can connect with you, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. There's links to social media. I'm pretty active on Twitter, or I guess X. I'm also active on LinkedIn, but all those connections are on my website.
Beautiful. Jon, thank you so, so much. Listening to you is such a reminder that leadership is not building comfort to begin with. It's building pressure, it's building responsibility, and really in the quiet choices we make when nobody's watching. I mean, what you've shown us today is that great leaders are not perfect. They're just present more than anything, and they earn their trust and they take ownership. They stay steady when everyone else feels the heat rising. So this has been delightful. Any final words before we wrap up?
Yeah, I like to say that leadership is a people business. And so people are both messy and they're amazing. And so once you learn to embrace that, you're going to have a lot more fun as a leader and you're going to be a lot less frustrated. So people will surprise you with their results. People will also frustrate you with things that they do, their quirks and what have you. But that's the way it is. And so leadership is a people business. If you want to be a great leader, you got to sort of embrace the idea of people. And I particularly love people. I love being around people and I love learning about the way people operate. So I think it makes it easy to be a leader when you love people.
I'll keep that line. People will surprise you. It stays with me.
Yes. Yes.
I love it. Thank you, Jon. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience so generously with our audience. To our listeners, if today's conversation touched you, inspire you, or made you think differently about your own leadership, share it with someone who needs that encouragement. Thank you for spending time with us. And remember, whether you're leading a team, a company, or your own family, leadership is an act of devotion. Until next time, we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thank you for being with us.